Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Mayor. Next, I would like to introduce someone else very important to tonight's event, our guest moderator, Jeffrey Rupp. Mr. Rupp is Director of Outreach and Corporate Engagement in the College of Business at Mississippi State. He has previously served as the Mayor of Columbus. We are so pleased to have him join us tonight. As our first three debaters join us on stage, I will turn the evening over to you, Mr. Rupp.
Good evening, everyone. Good turnout. Welcome again to the MSU mock presidential debate. We're looking forward to an open and fair discussion among our debaters. The format of tonight's debate was drafted by the MSU Speech and Debate Council, a nonpartisan organization. The rules have been agreed upon by all participants. The one-hour debate has been divided into three separate rounds. The first will explore the topic of education. The second round explores the topic of the economy. And the last round will consist of questions submitted by you, the audience. At the beginning of the round, I'll ask the same question to all three of the debaters. They'll have 2 minutes to respond, and from that point to the end of the segment, we'll have an open discussion. We ask that all the debaters be brief and respectful during their rebuttals, and we also ask that the audience remain quiet, except for a round of applause between rounds. And I now ask you to join me in welcoming our first three representatives. Round one. We begin with our Republican candidate, and I'm sure you will introduce yourselves.
My name is Nikki Reeder. I'm a political science major here, and I'm representing College Republicans.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Bolt. I'm a secondary education major, and I'm here representing College Democrats.
Hi, my name is Sam Miller. I'm an industrial engineer, and I'm representing Young Americans for Liberty.
Candidates, here's your first question. At this point, an associate's or bachelor's degree is a requirement for most jobs. And in many fields, such as STEM, there are not enough skilled workers available to meet the demand. What do you think would be an effective mechanism for making higher education more financially accessible?
Yes, thank you so much for your question. I do believe that the standardization of education, which comes from our dependence on a four-year university system, really makes education less flexible and less of a variety for people who have different interests and different learning styles and different budgets. So I think that what we need to do is take the stigma off of community colleges, technical institutes, online and work-based learning, really improve the quality education in those areas so that people who do have the different interests, learning styles, and budgets can obtain a good education. The object is quality and not quantity. We could also improve our investment approaches. Instead of depending so much on public subsidization, we could incentivize private participation in the funding of schools and students. Also, we can encourage enrollment by aiding the achieved students and return more to an achievement-based system. Instead of just trying to get everybody out there, we can encourage students to do well and obtain their college degree. Lastly, I believe that a more efficient use of funds would be ideal. Between 1993 and 2007, administrative bureaucracies per 100 students rose 66%, and that is way drastically more than the enrollment rate rose. So I believe that if a higher education and their allocation of funds does not serve a pedagogical function to all students, it should not be prioritized. And again, we just need to improve quality in education instead of standardizing it, really get to the importance of education, which is to give students the skills they need to improve on their own and to learn to the very best of their ability. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pohl, again, the question is, what do you think would be an effective mechanism for making higher education more financially accessible?
Well, first off, I'd like to thank the Speech and Debate Council and SA for hosting this event tonight, and Jeffrey Rupp for being here to moderate. Focusing now on the issue at hand, the core belief of the Democratic National Party's platform regarding education is the belief that every person, no matter who they are, where they live, or what socioeconomic status they were born into, should have access to affordable, quality post-secondary education. In this day and age, a college degree is increasingly required for a job that pays a middle-class wage, and a college graduate will earn over $1 million more over their lifetime. We want to solve the issues that our nation faces right now, like poverty and inequality. We need to put more importance and pride in ensuring that every student gets access to affordable quality education. Crippling debt should no longer be accompanied with the wish for a more enriched and affluent life. The Democratic National Party has several ideas on how to provide quality and affordable education, and I want to focus on 8 major aspects of this. First off, we need to make community colleges free. We will cut interest rates, and we will refinance current loans. We will expand access to income-based repayment programs. We will continue the public service, loan forgiveness, and discharge programs which were started by the Obama administration. We'll allow Pell Grants to be accessible year-round, re-evaluate the bankruptcy law, establish a Bill of Rights for borrowers and lenders so they know their options and how to avoid delinquency or default on their loans, and provide a longer moratorium so that people can have more time and resources to consolidate their loans and reduce their monthly payments. As a party, we want to achieve these goals because we believe strongly that affordable education is more important than the government making billions of dollars off of loans. And investing in the citizens of our nation is critical to the continued economic success and well-being of American families. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, the question again, what do you think would be an effective mechanism for making higher education more financially accessible?
Right, so the best way to make something more accessible is obviously make it more affordable, right? So currently right now, year 1960 to 2016, we've increased our allotments for higher education by 10 times. Funding per pupil is among the highest it's ever been. So we throw all this money at the issue, and we get no return. All we see is rising prices. Now, libertarians are different from what you hear in the mainstream because we think this is based on incentives, not necessarily funding. And why I say it's based on incentives. Now ask yourself, why would Mississippi State ever lower college tuition? There's really no incentive. Because a lot of college students, they can't afford college. It's a shame. But you have the federal government coming in, and they give out all these generous student loans. It sounds great, but what happens? The federal government, they love to spend money, as we all know. They run massive deficits. And they're willing to give all these loans no matter what the university charges. So the university can sit back and say, if I raise the price, the government's going to pay. So let's keep raising the price, and they'll keep paying. It's a death spiral upward. This would accurately explain why we have, the steep slope leading to higher tuition prices. Libertarians, we target the incentive. So rather than having the federal government come in, we recognize, look, the federal government should not be in the business of giving student loans. Historically, it's not been this way, and it just doesn't work. It's unempirical. What we instead see is, let's see banks in the issue. Now, I know there's a lot of stigmas against big banks and banks in general, but banks have skin in the game. If they default on a loan, guess what happens? They go out of business. So they're going to have a massive incentive to have interest rates based on a college student's major. Whereas if the federal government gets involved and forgives all these loans and puts taxpayers on the line, you end up transferring private debt to public debt. I think that's very immoral. It's on us to fund our own education. It's not on the taxpayers. It's not on old people. It's not on poor people. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates, we now have 3 minutes for rebuttal if anyone would like to start.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I'll go out swinging. The Democrat here, he talks about, you touched on college loan forgiveness. It sounds great, but how is that moral from your perspective? Because you take private debt and you make it public, so that means your grandmother, the children, they're all in the line for this debt. So could you please explain to me why you think that's a moral or acceptable position?
Because I strongly believe that an ignorant populace or an uneducated populace will always end up being more expensive than the expense of providing the education for them.
Okay, so the issue was it's a public good, right? Well, we get a lot of public good from a lot of things. Like, for instance, Apple's iPhone. All of us have smartphones practically. We all drove here. Does that mean we should start funding, Ford and Apple or give them subsidies? No, I don't think so. Just because you provide a public good doesn't mean you should receive a public subsidy.
I'll have to agree there. I believe that the public subsidization has gotten way too out of hand with education. There are different changes that we can make in order to make college more affordable without increasing subsidization. As I mentioned earlier, by standardizing education through public subsidization, it takes the element of educational quality out. It takes the variety out. We go to class now and we take a bunch of classes that we don't really need to take for our majors. And that is right there is a product of standardization of education by big government interference.
I have a question for the libertarians. How do you feel that putting the future of students in the hands of private businesses with no account or transparency will be better than in the hands of the government?
That's a really good question. I think the better question is, why don't we put our future in the hands of the government? The government, they have a monopoly on the postal service, something incredibly simple, delivery mail. They lose billions of dollars. And look at what the atrocity our federal government has done. We go to a foreign country, we bomb them, kill innocent people, we throw people in jail for marijuana, all these trivial offenses. The government's not taking care of us, they're not doing a very good job. So I just, for consistency's sake, I think it'd be better having a private solution, because private companies have incentive to perform. The government, they can print money, tax money, borrow money. So there's really no strong incentive there, and that's the libertarian position.
Do you have any examples of where a private business was more affordable and accessible than a government-provided aid?
Put me on the spot a little bit. So the question was more readily accessible or affordable?
Yes, I'm asking for examples where it's been more affordable or easier for people to have privatized loans than federal government.
Okay, well, let's talk about in general. When we say private, I'm viewing this holistically. So instead of having people default and all the taxpayers on the line, you don't have the general taxpayers line, so everybody's individual are responsible for their own debt. But to further that point,
I'm sorry, Mr. Miller, we are out of time, and I appreciate
I'll
the
skip the
spirit.
good part.
I know, I'm sorry, but we must move on. If we could, let's give all of our participants in this first round a round of applause. And if we could have our second group of debaters on the stage. Round two deals with economics. And before I ask the question, I'll go ahead and ask the candidates to introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Hood.
Hi, my name is Nolan Hood. I'm majoring in mechanical engineering here, representing the College of Public.
My name is William Bonduras. I'm a political science major here, and I'm going to be representing the Mississippi State College Democrats.
My name is Trey Goff, and I'm double majoring in political science and economics, and I'm here representing Young Americans for Liberty.
Thank you, gentlemen. Your question is, given the aging state of roads and bridges across the United States, how could government funds be used to improve both our infrastructure and the economy? Mr. Hood, we'll start with you.
That's a great question. That's something that I think all parties can get behind as infrastructure. I think if you survey the vast majority of Americans who believe that our infrastructure is crumbling, it's something that we need to do something about. They also believe in surveys that if we invest in infrastructure, it will positively affect our economy. I tend to agree, and so does the Republican Party. There is a difference, however, between the parties in how we carry out funding for infrastructure. The Republican Party and myself believe that it should be limited, federal funding should be limited to things that are strictly federal in nature. We shouldn't be funding things that are localized in nature. For example, the Highway Trust Fund, which the Republican Party is committed to funding, it's very necessary for its success of revitalizing our infrastructure, but 1/5 of it is committed to localized mass transit in about 6 major cities across America. So that's disproportionate. You get all this big pot of money, and you're giving 1/5 of it to 6 major cities. I can name them off, and they're all very Democrat-run. Special interest groups try to get in there and get a bunch of the money out of the fund, and that takes away from the general funds for the interstate highway system, that sort of thing. Also, we're opposed to infrastructure investment in select businesses, particularly with green energy, stuff like that, because the market is simply not there. We've seen the debacles through the Obama administration with Solyndra, that sort of thing, also with Amtrak. You cannot subsidize a market into existence, and that's been proved throughout at least the past decade. So that's the position of the Republican Party, and that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bonderas, the question is, given the aging state of roads and bridges across the United States, how could government funds be used to improve both our infrastructure and the economy?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I do want to go ahead and thank both my colleagues for being up here, and as well as the Student Association, Mississippi State Speech and Debate Council for putting on this debate, and all of you for being here. I know there's probably a million other things you could be doing tonight, so I know we all appreciate you coming here tonight, and we're hoping just to inform you. But on to the question, without further ado, let's dive into the question basically, how do we create jobs and fix our infrastructure at the same time? Well, I'm sure my Republican colleague has already told you, take the federal government, and I imagine my libertarian friend will tell you about, we need to privatize it, get private businesses involved in this. But the Democratic Party believes differently. We believe the way to handle this is through major federal investment in improving, updating, maintaining, and expanding our roads, bridges, school buildings, buildings just in general, things like that, as well as investing in modern energy, modern water, modern broadband, and even modernizing our schools, as well as investing in clean energy and green infrastructure. All this investment is going to create millions of jobs throughout the country, good-paying, secure middle-class jobs. But we do want to make sure we target this growth in areas that need it the most. That's areas like Mississippi. And we also believe that we want this growth to be fair and equitable, and not just go to the top 1% of people. All this this is going to increase demand for American steel and other American products to rebuild our infrastructure, and as well as lead to many jobs for some of the future engineers who are here. The question, though, often arises, how are we going to pay for this federal investment? And the main way that the Democratic Party wants to do this is to create an infrastructure bank in order to sell Build America bonds, as well as provide tax exemptions on municipal bonds, in order to raise this money. And if necessary, only if necessary, taxes be raised, but only raised on the top 1% of people. These are people, billionaires like Mark Zuckerberg, people, not you, not your everyday Americans, people like you likely don't even know. So I would tell you to not be concerned that your taxes will be raised by this investment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Goff, given the aging state of roads and bridges across the United States, how could government funds be used to improve both our infrastructure and the economy?
All right, I would first like to again thank both of my fellow debaters as well as the Student Association and the Speech and Debate Council for having this set up for us, and I really appreciate everybody being here tonight. First, I want to point out a philosophical difference between myself and the two major parties over there. See, they both agree that government spending on infrastructure is good economic stimulus, but I think there's a philosophical and a moral problem with that. You see, unlike my two opponents, I do not believe that the federal government knows how to spend your money better than you do. You see, the funding for all of their programs comes from either saddling our children with debt or from taking your money out of your pocket and spending it on projects that are most of the time just handouts to cronyists who are friends with the political class. No, this is called what the famous economist Frederick Hayek called the fatal conceit. They presume to be able to spend your money better than you do. I completely disagree with that. I believe that you own yourself, that you are an individual, you deserve dignity and respect as an individual, that you're not a subject to be mercilessly plundered to build failing solar energy plants and build failing infrastructure, but rather you are an individual. And as such, you deserve respect, not to be plundered. Further, every action that the government takes and that public policy in general incurs has an opportunity cost. This is what Bastiat called both the seen and the unseen. Everything has a seen consequence and an unseen consequence. The seen consequence of spending on infrastructure is that you have all these shiny new roads and bridges to nowhere most of the time. But the unseen consequence of all of this is that the money used to fund these programs is taken from productive, active entrepreneurs who now cannot embark upon all sorts of projects such as like the Apple Watch or the iPhone or Tesla's electric cars or anything like that. These projects cannot be done without financial capital. But what both of these people are talking about doing is the unseen consequence of taxation. It's removing that capital from these people and instead investing it in places that the private enterprise would not have otherwise had it. No, we libertarians believe that the best stimulus is simply unshackling and freeing the individual to voluntarily cooperate with his fellow citizens and create value in ways that are so ingenious and creative we cannot even imagine.
Thank you, gentlemen. You've articulated three very different opinions on this topic. You now have 3 minutes to debate amongst yourselves.
I'd like to ask a quick question to my libertarian friend. So you talked about freeing people and private businesses to invest in our infrastructure. Now, do you feel safe doing that when private businesses have zero accountability, zero transparency? We don't know what they're going to do. Would you feel safe with your roads being in the hands that we don't know what they're doing?
Do you feel safe with your cars and planes being in the hands of private companies as well? Because they all are. To me, I think this idea, is absurd that you would have, if we didn't have government funding for roads, you would have a Walmart CEO over here and a couple of consumers over here, and they'd be scratching their heads like, man, how do I get over there to get the stuff they have? No, that's absurd to me. Through voluntary cooperation and contract between individuals, you can have all sorts of infrastructure spending and all sorts of creative responses to problems of infrastructure that cannot otherwise be taking place right now because they're being crowded out by government funding and government taxation.
I'd like to make a point. You mentioned the tax code and taxing the top 1% more. I'd like to spin off of what Mr. Goff said. That removes capital from the economy, and it makes the economy more dependent on big government for funding for big projects. That's just what happens when you do that. That top 1%, if you tax it, it removes the incentive to achieve success, and it also removes the capital after the fact to reinvest in business. I just wondered what you had to say about that.
I would like to remind you that when I mentioned net taxing, that was not the primary response. The primary response was to create an infrastructure bank in order to sell bonds to help with this infrastructure. So I understand your concerns, but that isn't the primary response the Democratic Party wants to take on this. I also had a question for you. Kind of a similar thing to what I asked my libertarian friend is, do you believe that private businesses are safer to deal with our roads and I know he mentioned, oh, your cars are private, and that's okay. But your roads, those cars depend on the roads. Can you feel safe putting your money in somewhere where there's no accountability or transparency?
Well, in general, the Republican Party doesn't take much of a hard line stance on that. But you have to keep in mind that all roads built by the government are built by the lowest bidder. So, do y'all feel safe? I mean, come on. So this concept that, a government project is inherently going to try and make the best product ever is ludicrous. I mean, a private business is trying to make a product is going to be, they're going to try to make the best product they can to make the most profit they can off of that. And if their product's inferior, then it will be found out in the marketplace.
And to piggyback off of that, the entirety of the Public Choice School of Economics has spent a lot of time since the 1960s with James Buchanan, specifically pointing out how government bureaucracies have nothing more than an incentive to maximize their budgets and have no incentive whatsoever to create a good product or to provide a good service for individuals.
Gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. If the audience would join me in thanking the third and final round consists of wild card questions submitted by you, the audience. We can have our next group of participants on the stage. Candidates, if you would please introduce yourselves. We'll begin with Ms. Mears, then Mr. Ward, then Mr. Robinson, and that will be the order you also answer the question. So please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Kennedy Mears, and I'm a double major in political science and Spanish, and I'm the president of the College Democrats at Mississippi State University.
Everyone, I'm Andrew Word. I'm an accounting major junior year, and I am the president of Young Americans for Liberty.
Hello, my name is Colton Robinson, and I am a marketing major, and I am representing College Republicans.
And as a reminder, this round will be briefer. It'll be a 1.5-minute statement by each of the participants with a 2-minute rebuttal. Your question is, mass shootings have spiked in the past decade. What will your party do to help Americans stay safe in schools, malls, or movie theaters? Ms. Mearkey?
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everyone for being out here tonight to educate yourselves before next Tuesday when you go to the polls. So 33,000 Americans are dying every year. This is an epidemic. This is a public health crisis. So what are the Democrats going to do to fix this? Well, let me tell you a little bit about that. So we're finally ready to take action to address this gun violence. The country's really looking at us now. We can respect the rights of responsible gun owners while still keeping our communities safe. So we just believe in common sense gun laws. People who are dangerous, people who are on the no-fly list, people who are under the terrorist watch list, they should not be allowed to have firearms. We want to expand and strengthen background checks. We want to repeal Protection of Lawful Commerce Act and Arms Act to revoke the dangerous legal immunity protections that gun owners and sellers currently enjoy. We want to keep assault weapons off the street and really focus on mental health, because this is also a mental health crisis. So if we stop it early, this won't be a problem anymore. We want to also get the Center for Disease Control to have resources to study gun violence, because currently we don't have those resources. So this is really a public health crisis and something that we need to fix very soon, and that's how the Democrats are looking to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ward, you have 1.5 minutes.
All right. They say that, it has spiked, and it is true that it has spiked. However, mass shootings still make up less than 1% of all gun murders in the United States, and that's taking out suicides, because they like to skew the statistics by saying including suicides. If you look at just murders, less than 1% of all shootings are mass shootings, which by definition of the FBI is 3 or more people killed. Also, we have to look at the original intent of the Second Amendment in the first place. The original intent of the Second Amendment was to protect each individual's right to defend themselves. Everybody has a natural right to defend yourself with a weapon of your choice. If that means you want to carry a Glock, you have the choice to. If you want to carry an AR-15, it might be excessive, and some people might say, well, you don't need an AR-15, but you still have that right to do it. The government is ran by the people. That's the way it's supposed to be. The government's not supposed to tell us what to do. We tell the government what to do. They don't get to tell us, well, sorry, you can't own that particular firearm. You can't have that many rounds in your magazine. That's not their job. Our job is to tell them you need to stay small, not them tell us you need to be defenseless. And lastly, Great Britain, and Australia, and a lot of other European countries got rid of assault weapons and pistols. And what you saw is you had a spike in knife crime and other blunt object crimes, like baseball bats, hammers, etc. So the fact saying that if we get rid of guns, or if we have more common sense reform, it just doesn't make any sense, because other murders will go up with other weapons.
Mr. Ross, you have 1.5 minutes.
Absolutely. So mass shootings, they are a fact of life. It is something that we face in this country, and it is something that we will probably always face in this country. And like Mr. Word said, if you take away the guns, people are going to find a way to kill people. That's human nature. Since the beginning of time, people will kill people. We must help those who suffer from mental disabilities. We should help them. We should find them help. We should do everything that we can to make sure that we are protecting ourselves, our children, our families. And we must also remember that the reason that we have the Second Amendment is not so that we can walk around carrying AR-15s, which are not assault rifles, they're Armalite rifles, just like to clarify that. They are not for that reason. It is to maintain a well-maintained militia, and if the government oversteps its boundaries, then it is our job as the American people to shut that down and reestablish our way of life. I go back to, guns do not kill people. People kill people. We must take the spotlight off of weapons and put the spotlight on people who wish to do us harm. Whatever their reasoning may be, we go after the people. We don't go after the guns. Thank you.
Thank you. Now there is a 2-minute rebuttal period.
Kenny, I would just like to ask, can you kind of explain to me the common sense gun laws, and also the list that you would say we needed to enact. You know, who makes these lists, and what would you say, what constitutes me being able to be on the list and not be on a no-fly list? Who chooses that, and how do they choose that?
So yeah, so I was referring to the no-fly list or the terrorist watch list that the FBI puts out. And so we want people who are on that list to not be able to acquire firearms because they're already under that watch and they could bring harm to the American public. So going off that, I just wanted to ask Andrew a question as well. So I just want to ask, like, what would you say to the hundreds of American families that have been affected if you think that mass shootings only make up less than 1% of violence in America, but it's directly affected a huge portion of the American public?
Well, I don't think that less than 1% of all shootings are mass shootings. I know for a fact that less than 1% are mass shootings. And look, it's a terrible thing. I actually know someone who lost a child in the Sandy Hook shooting. It's a terrible tragedy. But does that mean that we need to eliminate everyone's rights just because of a small percentage of murders done by people who need mental health checks, as opposed to, just saying, hey, everybody, you don't have your rights to weapons anymore because a small minority died. More people die from swimming pools and prescription drugs, especially children. Children tend to fall in the pools a lot more than they do getting shot. And FDA doesn't do a very good job of protecting American people from prescription drug overdoses. So I would ask, how come you don't want to ban swimming pools or prescription drugs?
And with that, we will have to move on. For our next question, the order you will answer will be Mr. Word, Mr. Robinson, and Ms. Mears. And the question from our audience is, how much of an impact has social media had in this election? Has it been a positive or negative impact? Mr. Word, you have a minute now.
Right. I think there is a lot of positive impacts. One of the positive impacts is the instantaneity, I don't know what the word is, how instant you can get your news. So it has a great ability to educate. As soon as things happen, we can learn right off the bat. Okay, well, this news event just happened over here. This is what Trump said. This is what Hillary said. This is what Hillary's new plan is. Trump's new plan. We can learn things immediately. But it also has there's a lot of negatives, such as media bias. On Facebook, let's say you have a Tea Party Facebook page and you have BuzzFeed. They're going to give you two completely different biases on a current event. And so the real problem is, how do we get neutral news on social media? And I don't think we've had a lot of fair, balanced news on social media. Also, I think it's really good at exposing the corruption of our politicians. For example, Hillary Clinton, with the whole WikiLeaks thing. If we didn't have social media, it would have been a lot harder for people to get their news. It'd only be on 3 major networks: Fox, CNN, MSNBC, and newspapers. But now with social media, everybody gets to see, what kind of, people, Hillary Clinton's emails and how she mishandled those. You get to see people, you get to learn that Hillary Clinton was fed questions before a debate by the moderator, which CNN just fired her. I think there is a lot of positives, but I think the negatives outweigh it in the fact that it's very biased.
Mr. Robinson, do I need to repeat the question to you?
Yes, sir. Please.
How much of an impact has social media had in this election? Has it been a positive or negative impact?
Great. So I'm gonna go off some of what Mr. Word said. I totally agree that the amount of information that we have at our fingertips every single minute. Right now, you're sitting out in that crowd, and you could be looking up to see what's going on in the real presidential debate. You can be doing that right now while you're listening to us debate. So obviously, that is a wonderful thing. It is a wonderful thing that technology has taken us to some places, and we should all take advantage of that information that we have at our fingertips. But as well, I will hit on the media bias. The media has seemed to be extremely biased towards the liberal side and the liberal media. Many of them will not even put certain things that go on with Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. And so, that's a serious problem. And I wish that it would be a more fact-based reporting from all those. But unfortunately, it's not, and it may never be. But it does show who people are. And you can find things on the internet and through social media that no one else could ever find. And it's on your phone. So I think it has had a very positive for the elections and for things of that sort. but also the negatives would be that you can't really figure out what's true and what's not, because anyone can post anything on social media, and you never really know what the truth is and what's false.
Thank you. Ms. Mears, how much of an impact has social media had in this election, and has it been a positive or negative?
Absolutely. So I think it's safe to say that social media has had a huge impact on this election. Whether it's positive or negative is up for argument, but social media has really been a great way to connect with people, specifically millennials. So like they said, the information is out there instantaneously, and then you immediately know what's going on. And so this has really brought millennials into this election cycle, which is a great thing. Both candidates have used social media to their advantages, but sometimes that also takes away from the real issue. So now we're hearing Donald Trump's deepest thoughts at 3 a.m. in the morning. Like Colton said, you really learn who the candidates are through their social media now, specifically Donald J. Trump. But really, social media has had a huge impact by outreaching to hundreds of people that wouldn't have been impacted without it. But with social media, people are quick to judge as well because the information is coming out there, and like they said, the media is biased. So I think that social media has had a huge impact, and some positive, but also some negative.
Candidates, we now have a 2-minute rebuttal period. I'd like to begin.
I'd like to ask both candidates how they feel social media, if it has positively or negatively impacted their particular candidate. Because I know with like third party, we actually get some exposure on social media. I was wondering how you feel. Does it help or hurt your candidates?
I believe that social media has really helped our candidate. It's really helped her to connect to the millennial generation as well, and to get her voice out there to this new generation that she sometimes has a hard time connecting with.
I think social media has helped my candidate, and I will say that a lot of people probably disagree with me about that, but my reasoning is that with the amount of liberal media that we are fighting against now, coming from mainstream media and things of that sort, I think that we are able to voice our own opinion and get it out, even though sometimes it's being covered up and things of that sort. With social media, we are still able to get our word out and get the truth out the way we see it versus the way that other people see it.
Has there been any time when you might have thought that your candidate maybe should have censored what they put out on social media, or ran it through, spell check or a proofreader, things like that?
Yes, we'll just preface that. I think that one thing we all need to remember is that everyone is human. Some of us are more human than others, obviously. But I think that it's time that we look towards not so much as what the candidates are saying, but we look at what they believe in. And whether you vote for one party or the other, you need to see what morals really stay with you and which party best represents those morals.
We will move on. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, that's it. Our third and final question, the answer, it will be, for the order it will be answered, it will be Mr. Robinson, Ms. Mears, and Mr. Word. The question is, with regard to the Constitution, do the founders' words mean what they say, or is it a living document to be applied flexibly according to changing circumstances? Mr. Robinson, you have 1.5 minutes.
I believe, and I believe that I share the same view as my party, that the Constitution is not a living and breathing document. It was written, and it applies to us now, the way that it applied to us then. Things are changing, yes, I understand that, and I know that that would make people think that maybe we should change with the times, but these laws were written for a reason, and they have reasoning behind everything that they say. And it is not the job of judges that are appointed by elected officials to write legislation from the bench. That is not their job. Their job is to interpret the laws, not to write them. This election is extremely important because whoever wins this will be able to appoint multiple judges, and those are the people that uphold the laws and interpret the laws so that we, the individual, can live and breathe and enjoy everything that America gives us. We must elect someone that will uphold our Constitution, and that will fight for our Constitution, and that won't get up to the Supreme Court and say, you know what, I didn't really like what the founders said right here, so we're just going to change it. That's not what their job is. And it is our Constitution, and it has been under attack, whether it be for the Second Amendment, our First Amendment, or any other amendment that you hold dear. It is all under attack. And this election right here will tell us which way it's going to go.
Thank you. Ms. Mears, again, the question is, with regard to the Constitution, do the founders' words mean what they say, or is it a living document to be applied flexibly according to changing circumstances?
Yes, thank you. So I'd like to tag on to what Colton was saying. The Constitution is also our Constitution. And the Democrats believe in the same Constitution that y'all do, except we do believe that the Constitution is a living, breathing document. Of course, it's 226 years old, so anything that all needs to be updated once in a while. So what we believe is that we're not trying to change the Constitution. We just want to interpret the laws based on what the Founding Fathers meant when they put their words into the Constitution. And so just like anything else, it needs to be updated, and we can respect the Constitution while still updating it.
Mr. Ward, again, I'll give you the question with regard to the Constitution. Do the founders' words mean what they say, or is it a living document to be applied flexibly according to changing circumstances?
The Founding Fathers' words meant what they say. It is not a living document. It's a law. It's a law document. It's a legal document. It's not a living, breathing document up for interpretation. It's up for application in certain cases, but it's not up for interpretation. And just think about the implications if we said, well, all the amendments are up for interpretation. And I would hate to see the First Amendment or the Fourth Amendment, your right to be protected, need a warrant before you can be searched. I would hate for the court to say, well, it was 1780s when the Fourth Amendment was written, but it's 2016 now, so we need to worry. It'd be okay if we search you every once in a while without a warrant. I don't want that kind of. It's a slippery slope, and I don't want the government being able to have that sort of interpretation. That's what libertarians believe. We believe that the government should be small, and that it should be very strict in following how the Constitution is.
We will close with a 2-minute rebuttal on this issue of the Constitution as a living document.
Kennedy, I would like to know, what particularly do you believe should be updated as far as the Constitution is concerned? What certain areas do you believe should be updated?
Well, I think I'm going to give an example. So, for example, the Second Amendment. In the Second Amendment, it doesn't state that assault weapons are in the Constitution at all. So that's one place where we have to interpret the Constitution based on what has come up today and issues and problems of today. Now, I have a question for y'all. If you say that it means what it said, well then, when we gave women the right to vote and we amended the Constitution, is that not a living, breathing document that can be changed and can be fixed, or different things like that?
Well, I'd like to chime in right here. That's what the 19th Amendment was for. The court didn't say, well, let's interpret the Constitution and say, well, okay, well, based on our interpretation, now women can vote. What happened was they said, well, let's actually make a legal change to our Constitution based on the way the Constitution says it can be amended. So the 19th Amendment was passed. It said women can vote. It wasn't because it was interpreted as a living, breathing document. It's because the actual legal document itself was changed.
And I'd like to say regarding the Second Amendment, assault rifles, it's armed light rifles, but the way that is set up is to be, if your government is overstepping its boundaries and they are coming in and completely ruling your life like they were when we, revolted, then we should be able to do that. And a part of that is having the weapons so that you can fight whoever you have to fight, so that you can get back what was rightfully yours and protect your family and protect your homeland. And that's what the Second Amendment is all about. And that's our stance on that.
We are out of time, I'm sorry, and I'd like the audience to join me in thanking I would like to invite all the representatives from the Speech and Debate Council up on the stage as we close out this evening. Thank you.